call to order. Good evening and welcome. My name is Nathaniel Welch, co-chair of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee. I'm calling this public meeting to order at 7:05 p.m. This meeting is being recorded, and the agenda was posted on the committee's webpage on the town website on December 26th. Someone else in it. And this meeting is held under the authority of legislation that authorizes remote and hybrid meetings until March 31st, 2025. In the event of a technical difficulty from which we cannot recover within 5 minutes, the meeting will be ended, and all matters on the agenda that have not been heard will be continued to the next meeting. All votes should be taken by roll call vote. For the minute for tonight's meeting will be taken by committee member and co-chair Adrian Boardman. Adrian, thank you. And at this time, I'll ask the committee members to indicate that they are present when I call their name. Mary Beth Barker.
Present.
Adrian Boardman.
Present.
Brian Krauts.
Present.
Jemine Crowell.
Present.
Dorcas Miller.
Present.
Sam Stearns.
Present.
And Nat Welch is present. So 7 of 7 members are here and we have a quorum. Yay. Our first agenda item is to approve the minutes from the November 30th meeting. Those were sent out to committee members. Are there any edits or corrections that the members want to suggest? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. I will do a roll call now to accept the minutes from November 30th. Mary Beth Barker.
Accept. Yes.
Adrian Boardman.
Aye.
Brian Krauts.
Aye.
Joanne Crowell.
Yes. Accepted.
Thank you. Dorcas Miller.
Aye.
Sam Stearns.
Here, present.
And do you accept the minutes?
Yes.
Good. And then Nat Welch accepts them. The minutes are approved unanimously. Thank you. We do not have a town update memo, as our illustrious leader is still on maternity leave. I'm doing well from what I understand. So I'm going to move directly to committee business, and then I'll follow committee business with public comments or questions. I'd like to welcome and note Terry Ackerman, our select board liaison, is here tonight, and wish you Happy New Year, Terry. So the first item on the agenda is the Concord Middle School Bruce Freeman Rail Trail path. And this was a topic that first came up when the middle school was being planned for. And now that the construction has started, we think it's time to go ahead and start to think about how do you connect the middle school to the Bruce Freeman, so that students have a way to ride to school. The path would be ADA compliant, is the intent, and it would connect the school to the rest of the town. I'd like to report to the committee that at the end of last month, I had a meeting with Megan Zamuto and our head of the National Resource Commission, Delia Kay. Sorry, I had a senior moment there. And we talked about what the process would be to get a plan together, get funding to do a plan, to actually present a proposal to the town to make that connection. And at that meeting, one of the issues that came up is the town is short-staffed, and in thinking about trying to apply for a Mass Trails grant to do an engineering study, it was really not enough time between now and February 2nd to do that. So we talked about what the next steps might be, and we would first start by applying for potentially applying for a CPA grant to fund a study, which would, I think the grants are in September of 2024 is when the grant application would have to go in. If we got the funding for it, we'd have to wait until town meeting in 2025, to approve the spending of that. And then between around July of 25, money would be available. The town would then go out for a bid and have the study done. That study would then be presented back to the town. We would potentially look for a grant from the state for money. And then, potentially by 2026, actually start doing the trail. Anyway, that was the gist of the conversation. So one of my tasks was to come back to the committee and report that conversation, and also to let the committee know that what we'd like to do is let some of the other town committees know we're thinking about doing this, start to get them involved. That would be the school committee, the transportation advisory committee, let's see, maybe a couple of other committees as well that were listed, and start the process of trying to figure out how do we go about getting money for it. So this morning, as one of my follow-ups, I spoke to Simon Cataldo, who is our representative, and just let him know this is what we're thinking about doing. And he is going to look around, and one of his thoughts was potentially, if the town wanted to put it on the list, he could look for an earmark to fund this kind of a study. So that's potentially on the table to do that. And then I'm also, as part of the outcome of that meeting with Megan and Delia, I've asked Marcia Rasmussen, our former director of planning, who is now consulting to the town of Sudbury of the Bruce Freeman, if she could give me the name of contacts at engineering firms who might be able to say, hey, to do this kind of a study would be X amount of money. And it would give us an idea of what we'd need to apply for the CPA for a grant. I'm going to pause because I said a lot, and I just want to see if anybody has any questions or comments or thoughts. Adrian.
Question, yeah. So is the thought that the first step is that some type of feasibility study needs to be done to determine, given the slope, given all of that this is even possible? And then the next range of, or the next step of a funding request would be to actually design and construct, or are those somehow all lumped together in one funding request?
I think initially, I will say we, but probably mostly me, thought feasibility study, but then in conversations, it seems that it's a feasible idea. Question is, how would you actually design and build it? So the thinking is, let's go for the design study, an engineering study, so that we would have enough information to be able to then say, okay, it's going to be X amount to build this. How do we fund it? And where do we go for it? So that was the idea. And I also attended a Mass Trails grant meeting yesterday where they kind of talked about some of the parts to it, but it was mostly about forest trails, not about paths like this one. But it was helpful to hear what they're looking for. Joanne.
Hi, I don't know what CPA stands for. Is it Concord something or conservation or what?
Community Preservation Act.
Thank you.
It's a pot of money that I think comes when when houses are sold. Is that right? Someone needs to fill me in on this, but there's a pot of money that we can use to do various things around the town.
And is that so? That's controlled within Concord.
Controlled within Concord. You make a grant to the committee that oversees it. They then award various monies, and we paid for a number of things in the Bruce Freeman trail already that way.
Thank you.
Nat, did you want to clarify the source of the funding?
Yes, Dorcas, do you know what that is?
Barbara.
Barbara, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
When you look at your property tax bill, you will see a big number and then you'll see a much smaller number. And the towns can vote to tax themselves a surcharge on the property tax. I between 1% and 5% or something, and I don't know. Ours is around 2%. So that's where it comes from.
And Terry, you want to,
Well, yes, the max we can do is 3%. And most towns have done 3%, but Concord is doing 1.5%.
okay, thank you. Dorcas,
Is there any way to connect this trail with people doing the landscaping for the for the new school? Because the trail would probably run right through one of the soccer fields.
so the answer, I think the short answer is no. The landscaping is already, built into the project. When Pat and I walked it, it's not necessarily that it would run through are you talking about the new soccer fields or the ones down low?
One's down low.
Down low, yes. So it would either go through or go around them, depending on how it was situated. But I don't know if they're doing any landscaping on the lower fields.
Okay.
Any other committee questions? Otherwise, I will recognize Barbara Pike.
Yes, I'm wondering with your meeting with Delia and Megan, is there likely to be any obstacle to constructing this other than the funding? I mean, nothing with wetlands or, I mean, Delia was there.
Yes, but my recollection is, and I asked her the question, but at this time, there does not seem to be any wetland kind of issue. The property is owned by the town of Concord, and in fact, the property one closer to Powder Mill Road is also owned by the town of Concord. So it's a fairly large line, space that abuts the Bruce Freeman, so that there are a lot of opportunities in terms of where the path might actually connect to the trail.
Okay, thank you. You may recall that way back, almost 20 years ago, the Friends actually provided the $25,000 for the initial feasibility study for the trail through Concord. And it's possible that the Friends could help with, depending on the amount of, it doesn't seem like it would be all that much money for a short path, but you might keep the Friends in mind if it turns out that you need some money now to kind of move things forward.
Well, first, thank you, Barbara, for offering that. We have not forgotten the Friends. And in the session, one of the questions was, how might we engage the Friends to help? But we're still, I think, a little bit too early. Carlene was there at the meeting. Carlene, your board member, also participated. And she said she would make sure that the board was aware of what, the conversation, and if the thought was to go after money, then she'd work with us and the board to do that. But thank you for the offer.
Another possibility, you said that one of the roadblocks, one of the delays is personnel to actually write whatever needed to be written, and that you were, Marcia does seem to be doing some freelancing. She's down in Sudbury, maybe half time. So that's another possibility, depending on, how fast you want to move this forward. If you wanted some funds to hire Marcia to write whatever it was that was the first step, I kind of forget what it was.
It was, the first step would be go to the Mass Trails, go for a Mass Trails grant, which is due on February 2nd. I think we'd have a very good chance, but it's just getting the people to write it. So I think that's a great idea. I will follow up with Megan and talk about that idea with her. This is a town project and the town would do it. So I want to, I've incorporated Megan in all of my communications. So I think that's a great idea. And I will ask her if she might consider using Marcia to help write it, because it doesn't seem that complicated. But I'm sure there's a way to write it that Marcia already knows. So that's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? I do want to acknowledge that a number of you had agreed to help out with writing the grant. And that was before I had the meeting with Megan, where we do need some town person potentially to do it. So that may still come up, but I appreciate everyone's offer to help out. So next step is I'm going to talk to the folks. I think one from Fussin O'Neill and one from I think it's GPI, Matt Kearney, who actually I think was involved in the school project itself. So he's aware of the topography, et cetera, and see if I can get a ballpark figure from them. I'll also talk to Megan about the idea of using Marcia maybe to do the grant quickly. The one issue that comes up is we need a 20% match for the grant. So once I find out what the ballpark number would be, Barbara, we may come to, and if Marcia is willing to write it, we may come to the Friends and say, could we get could we ask you for the 20% piece to cover that portion of the grant?
Okay, well, we just need to talk about that.
Yep. And we need to have some data before we talk about it.
Exactly.
I'd say I don't think there's any action the committee needs to take on this. As long as you're comfortable with your co-chairs doing this work, we'll keep moving it forward. And if anything comes up between now and the next meeting, I'll make sure we have an email out to everyone so you're aware of what's happening. Any other comments or questions on the path? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda, here, is the town report. Each year, a committee is required to file a town report. There's some guidelines for it, and Adrian's offered to kind of do the first draft, and it's due. When is it due, Adrian? January 19th?
The 19th.
Right. And so I just want to ask the committees, if the committee is okay with us. This is what we did last year. We drafted a report and we sent it. And generally, we pull all the data from the minutes. We list everybody who's on the committee. We acknowledge all the great work that members have done. And we talk about kind of the key things that the committee did this year. And if the committee's okay, between the two co-chairs, we would put the draft together and send it to the town. I don't know if we need a motion to, if the committee needs to pre-approve us doing that work. Terry, do you have a sense of that? If you're still there?
You don't need a vote to do that.
Okay, great. Great, thank you.
But one of the chairs can write it.
Okay.
That's fine.
Well, Adrian's going to do the heavy lifting, and I'm gonna polish a great piece of art that she's writing. Okay, great, thank you. The third item was a continuation from last month about planning about topics that we want to try and tackle in 2024. We had a list of items that we kind of put on the plate, and I wanted to create an opportunity if we wanted to have a further discussion as to what we want to tackle next. we have this town, we have the path to the CMS. There has been discussion about, do we want to tackle, questions about e-bikes, safety issues, et cetera. So I wanted to see if anybody had a burning desire to make sure something was on our plate in the next few meetings. So I'll open it up for discussion to the committee. Yes, Dorcas, and then Brian.
Just a quick one. What are the chances of getting a bench between Powder Mill Road and Williams Road?
Great question. I think we can certainly ask the town if there's. I do remember that when the trail was built, they picked specific spots for benches, and I think it's well worth a discussion. So why don't we put that on our next meeting cycle, and dive into it a bit. Do you have a specific spot you're thinking about, Dorcas?
Not particularly, but that's a really long stretch. Basically, it goes from Powder Mill Road all the way into West Concord Center.
Into West Concord, right? There's no stopping
So
point.
there's nothing.
0.9
So it
miles.
would be-
0.9 miles. Is that approximate, Brian, or
Approximately, yeah.
Well, it just seems like we have a lot of walkers on the trail. It would be nice to have a place to sit.
yeah? I mean, what one thought is near the swamp across from the soccer field, right? That's there. That seems
Looking
like
at the
one.
Jenny Dugan, yeah, that would be
Yep.
a pretty place to have it. Occasionally you see wildlife there, especially down towards just before Williams Road. Sometimes if you have a little place to sit, the wildlife comes up. It'd be a nice spot.
And then there's a spot between Williams and the crossing,
Yep.
heading towards the bridge, because there's an open field there as well. So why don't I ask the town what are the criteria if we wanted to add a bench in? I know, Barbara, you've mentioned that in the past about having more benches, and maybe like a half mile is a reasonable number to think about. Mary
Yeah,
Beth? Oh, go ahead.
that's true that the Friends have asked about that in the past, and we've had funds donated for a bench.
Yeah.
So I don't think funding would be a problem. We have, in memory of.
Yeah. Okay, I will check with the town on that. Mary Beth, any thoughts from the Commission on Disabilities with regard to benches? Anything you want to add?
I'm sure that they would appreciate the benches, so I don't have anything more to add than what's been said. I think it is a great idea. And
Yeah.
I've often seen people stop along there and stand in the trail to watch wildlife. So I think it would also be, it would help with just the flow of traffic as a safety precaution to have them off the trail and sitting down watching it as opposed to standing there in the
Yep.
trail. So, yeah.
And does a bench need like something to view, or can it be like in the trees somewhere? Any thoughts on that?
I think it can just be like a functional place for someone to take a break. I think
Yeah.
it's nice to have something to see from where you are, but I think it can just serve kind of a functional purpose of giving someone a place to rest or to stop.
That makes sense. Okay. All right. I'll talk to the town about any.
I would agree with that, but I think if the placement of it is along that, like the Jenny Dugan, what's the water where the wildlife are?
Jenny Dugan, yeah.
Then facing the water, facing the wildlife would
Yep.
make more sense than facing the trail.
Mhm.
In those areas where there is something to look at.
There is a view. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Brian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just looked real quick. The halfway point on that stretch is right at the edge of the southern edge of the fields of Sanborn. And the whole stretch is 0.89 miles actually, so I wasn't there. I know it well.
Wait, is that two Commonwealth Avenue or?
Between Powdermill and Williams.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because we, there's a bench at the
And-
bridge over the Assabet, right? Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
All right, good. So halfway, you said is,
on that stretch, halfway is right by Sandmore, the southern edge of the school.
okay. Okay,
But then
so,
it's another half mile. There's another half-mile stretch till you get to the
okay,
Old Marlow.
all right. That sounds good. Any other topics for discussion?
Yeah, I had two others. One was, on the one hand, I'm amazed by how well the trail cleans itself sometimes. Like when there's one day there's wet leaves and the next day it's dry and blown away. But I have noticed there are times like now when there was like the pine cone apocalypse where there's a few spots where it's still pretty, you can see the paths, but it's still pretty thick in the middle. And that would seem like a possible volunteer activity that might be safe enough for the town to allow with minimal oversight, get some brooms or a leaf blower out there. And the second, and this might be a topic that's been discussed, I'm sure it's been discussed in the past. It hasn't been discussed since I've been on the committee, but I'm thinking about it as I've been walking around White Pond and seeing how the trail is interacting with the pond. And that is, I don't know what the town's plans or our committee's role is in managing the potential use of the pond from the trail, which I know has been lots of concern historically, but now I'm starting to see it kind of take shape in terms of there's going to be that long fence along where it's closest to the pond, but then the fence looks like it's going to end, and that's kind of where the trailhead is, and that's from right near the steepest part where people access the pond. So that's on my radar right now as well.
So there is a lot of history to that part of the right of the and I've been at the tail end of it since 2020. The actual fencing and railings are governed by MassDOT in terms of what can go where. So generally there are no fences just to kind of keep people out there for safety reasons.
Right.
And there was a lot of discussion about that. It is a concern about how people are going to use the pond. The folks who own the trust that has the land, through which the Bruce Freeman runs through, have had concerns for a while about that. So we're at the mercy of MassDOT as they finish the trail. And I think part of our work is going to be figuring out how does it actually work in operation, and what's going to happen with that. I do know that in past years there have been I think there are rangers who work in the conservation land there to keep people from going in, and I think it's an issue we're going to have to observe and address. See, I saw Dorcas's hand first because you're right near White.
The fence posts are already there.
Okay.
They haven't put the ones that go sideways, but the uprights are already there. So very easy to see exactly what's going to happen. I think probably we need to connect with the Trails Committee to see how they want to connect into their trail system. And I haven't been to a trails meeting lately, but it just never was discussed.
Is that something that are you thinking about going to a trails meeting? Would you be willing to go and ask them what's going on with it?
I can't go to a trails meeting. I might be able to do if it's on
Zoom, yeah.
If it's on Zoom, I might be able to.
Okay.
Otherwise
we could invite one of the trail committee members to show
I think that would be the best thing, was to have a discussion with them at one of our meetings, because I sat through a lot of meetings and it was never ever discussed, and I sort of gave up on it. But now that the posts are in, so now you can really see where the fence is going to be.
I actually tried to walk down to look at it, but they've fenced off.
Oh, yeah, you
Uh,
just go around. Everybody goes around.
Okay,
Nobody pays attention to the fencing off.
okay.
We
I
still
don't want
have
to
a
get in
guy,
trouble with it.
we still have a guy that jogs down every night around somewhere another hour or two, about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. See his headlight coming down. He jogs there every night.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Other comments on the fencing question?
One follow-up on that. So I just realized as I'm on the GIS site that it's the Pickard Trust that owns that little kind of triangle
Yes.
of land.
Yep.
The
I didn't realize
Open
that.
Trust.
Yeah, because the trustees, they're my neighbors, because that they own various patches around our neighborhood. So
Yeah.
I actually just didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, no, we had a number of conversations with them, or they participated in a number of meetings with regard to their concerns about fencing and making sure they had access to the pond, et cetera, through their land. We'll keep an eye on that, and I will reach out to the chair of the Trails Committee, see if we can get them to show up at one of our upcoming meetings. Okay. No one's raised the issue of snow plowing, so
I was
gonna, were you gonna raise it, Adrian?
I was debating whether or not I wanted to open that up, but I do think that as we get now into the winter season and we have, the first snow expected, that I'm sure we'll receive more public comments around what our role is in making that decision, what our stance is, what we can help influence. So I know we had brainstormed during our last meeting, what role could our committee play in just trying to have like a public forum,
For
right?
the
I know
conversation.
there's no budget, there's resource. I mean, there's a lot of things that could make it hard to implement, but I think having the discussion and coming up with a recommendation is important.
Okay. We're lucky in that we have no authority, and we are also a forum that can, have the conversation. And
Right.
Our role is then to pass on to the town what our recommendation is. So it's a perfect opportunity for us.
Right. Like, for example, with, the 6 to 9, whatever inches of snow we're going to get over the weekend, but then I think Wednesday is going to be like in the 50s. I would envision for a couple of days, we're just stuck with like a slushy, wet situation on the trail. And then if it freezes after that. So I think there's a lot of factors at play beyond just, keeping it snow covered so people can ski, right? I think that there's a lot of like this in-between weather that makes it just really dangerous and cumbersome for someone to be able to use the trail.
And I think the $60,000 question, or whatever the value is should this trail now be considered part of the commuting and transportation network in the town, where we have a lot of trails already that are designed solely for recreation.
Right.
And I think that's a question that will certainly raise issues on both sides.
Right. And if one day we do have this connector to the middle school, we can't really promote it as a safe way for kids to get to school if it's
not plowed,
ice
right.
covered, right?
Right. So do you think we should throw it on next month's agenda and see what happens? And any thoughts?
I think it's worthwhile to start to have more formal discussions around it.
Yeah, we haven't had anything exciting in a couple of months, so why don't we go ahead and do that? We'll put it on the agenda for next. Well, we'll let Joanne see how the sausage gets made in the committee. Okay. Okay, I'll add that to the agenda. Any other issues we want to maybe make sure we tackle? Okay. Open the floor to members of the public. Anybody have anything they'd like to bring up? Barbara Pike?
This is not a new issue, but I'm wondering if we could have some clarity on the process for removing the walk your bike signs in Junction Park. Your committee changed that rule about a year ago, and
Nothing's happened. Yeah.
they're still there. And so what is the process? Who tells who to do what?
So the process is, I think, the co-chairs, one of us goes to Megan, who's the, you know, kind of our senior staff person, and says, we voted on this a year ago. What is the town, what's the town's process for carrying this out? And are there any, you know, questions or issues that need to be addressed? So I'm happy to take that to Megan in the next week or two and report back to the committee next month.
Well, that'd be great.
Okay. And I appreciate you, Barbara, your continuing to ask the question.
Well, I just think it leads to bad feelings.
Yeah.
That some people seem to think that cyclists are supposed to be walking their bikes, but that's not the policy. And the trail map that the town created last February shows slow your pace in this special place. And possibly the town would want to put some signage like that.
Right. Well, there is, I mean, part of the design was to have a gateway into Junction Park. So that's also, I think, a topic to discuss with Megan.
But I think that the gateway and the signs could be separate issues.
Right. Okay.
Because it seems like the signs is just implementing something that's already been decided.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's part of an overall approach to the park.
Thank you.
Terry, you popped up. Oh, you've got. Do you have any comment you want to make on that issue?
No, just I wanted to wish everyone a happy new year and thank you all for your service to the town. That's all.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Brian.
Sorry, I had one more on the topic of things that have been the same for a long time. The automatic lights sort of work sometimes at Williams in
Yep.
certain light conditions, apparently, and don't work at Old Monroe. So no
Okay.
change there.
So on our webpage, there is a link to a form to tell Public Works. So any of it, I've used it a couple of times.
They might get tired of me, but
no, that's fine. This is, you know, if they see it enough times, they're going to have to do something about it. So I'll also make a note to check in with Megan on that. But if you do notice anything, any member notices anything on the trail, there's a link to a form for the DPW, whether it's, you know, cleaning the trails or if a branch falls on it, or, you know, if there's a pothole or something that you notice, you can use the form and just fill it out and send it, and it will go right to the right people at DPW. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments or questions? Awesome. So our next meeting is going to be, I have to look at my calendar. It's going to be February, the first Thursday in February, which will be the 8th. No, the 1st. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The 1st. Thank you. That is the first Thursday. Is on the 1st. Another Zoom call. And so I'd like, if there are no other comments or questions, I'd like a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Do a roll call to adjourn. Mary Beth Barker,
Yes.
Adrian Boardman,
Aye.
Brian Krauts,
Aye.
Joanne Crowell,
Yes.
Dorcas Miller,
Yes.
Sam Stearns,
Aye.
and Nat Welch says aye. This meeting of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee is adjourned at 7:44, and wish you all a continued fun January. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.